Sometimes the cold whispers secrets only the brave can hear. Ethan Walker muttered under his breath as he trudged through the knee-deep snow, each step crunching against the frozen forest floor, Bolt's powerful legs cutting through the powder with silent precision, ears high and eyes glowing amber, scanning for the faintest flicker of movement. The wind howled through the pines, carrying the scent of ice, wet wood, and the faint metallic tang of frostbitten leaves, a sharp reminder of the wilderness's quiet authority. Ahead, a flicker of movement caught Ethan's eye, a small figure teetering on the edge of a snow-laden bridge, hunched and trembling, hands grasping the rail with desperation. The figure's breath came in short, ragged clouds, mingling with the swirling snowflakes that danced like tiny spirits around them. Without hesitation, Ethan pushed forward, muscles coiling beneath layers of flannel and jacket, fingers brushing the icy rail for balance, every heartbeat measured and deliberate. Bolt growled softly, the low rumble vibrating through his chest, alerting Ethan to the subtle shift in the air, the minute quiver in the bridge that only a trained animal could sense. Snow clung to Ethan's boots, soaking through the leather and denim, but he barely noticed, focused entirely on reaching the elder, guiding them with a steady hand, a warm but firm touch. The wind tugged at his jacket. The branches scraped across his shoulders like unseen fingers warning him of the forest's watchful gaze. As they neared safety, Ethan's voice cut through the storm, calm and steady. "It's all right. You're almost there." Bolt positioned himself to brace the elder's weight. Paws splayed on the icy planks, tail low but tense. Amber eyes locked on Ethan for the signal, then back to the treacherous gap ahead. Step by careful step, they navigated the snow-slicked bridge, the cold biting through their gloves, cheeks flushed from exertion and the frigid air, until finally, the elder was safely on solid ground, gasping but alive, eyes wide with astonishment and gratitude, the snowflakes catching in their hair and eyelashes like tiny crystals of hope. Ethan gave a quiet nod to Bolt, who wagged his tail briefly, ears flicking, the unspoken understanding passing between man and dog that the worst was over, yet something beyond the ordinary awaited. Through the trees ahead, a cabin emerged, half hidden beneath layers of snow, windows glimmering with a soft, pulsing light as if the building itself had a heartbeat, walls breathing quietly beneath the frost. A gentle hum rose from within, almost melodic, intertwining with the rustle of pine needles and the distant echo of a creek frozen under a thin sheet of ice. Ethan stepped closer, boots sinking slightly into the fresh snow, breath fogging in front of his face, each inhale carrying the scent of wood, smoke, and the forest's hidden energy, and Bolt's ears twitched, nose lifted high, sensing the faint vibration of life within the cabin's wooden beams, a rhythm that mirrored their own hearts, steady but full of anticipation. The storm's fury faded behind them, leaving a serene silence that wrapped around the cabin like a protective shroud, the world reduced to the soft crunch of snow underfoot and the whisper of wind through the trees, and Ethan realized that this was no ordinary place. The cabin awaited them, alive in ways only the patient and kind could ever understand. The door of the cabin creaked softly as Ethan stepped inside, boots leaving faint prints on the frost-touched wooden floor, and Bolt padded beside him, ears high and alert, sniffing the air that carried the rich aroma of aged wood, pine resin, and something faintly sweet, almost like honey left by the summer bees. Sunlight filtered through narrow, frost-lined windows, painting the room in streaks of pale gold that danced across the walls, highlighting carvings etched long ago into the wooden beams, patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from the corner of the eye. Ethan ran his gloved hands along the smooth surface of the counter, feeling the subtle vibrations beneath the planks, a heartbeat hidden within the cabin itself, and he glanced at Bolt, whose amber eyes mirrored his own curiosity, as if the dog understood the cabin held a secret eager to reveal itself. A low hum began to rise from the floorboards, faint but steady, harmonizing with the whisper of the wind against the eaves, and Ethan felt a shiver of wonder travel up his spine. Moving cautiously, he followed the sound to a narrow staircase tucked beneath a corner, partially hidden by a worn rug, the threads frayed and muted with dust. Bolt sniffed at the edge, pawing gently, prompting Ethan to bend down and lift the rug, revealing a hatch whose iron hinges bore the weight of decades, rust muted to a deep orange. Ethan's fingers traced the cold metal, feeling the pulse of something alive beneath, an energy that seemed to breathe, and he exchanged a glance with Bolt, who tilted his head, ears flicking as if acknowledging the cabin's subtle magic. With a deep breath, Ethan lifted the hatch, the hinges groaning in protest, revealing a descending staircase spiraling into shadow, faint light glimmering from below. Step by step, he moved down, Bolt following closely, the dog's paws soundless against the stone, nose twitching with each subtle vibration in the floor, scenting warmth, life, and something inexplicably familiar. The air grew cooler but carried a faint mineral scent, like water moving beneath rocks, and Ethan realized the cabin was more than wood and stone. It was a living space, a guardian of something hidden, a place where time had paused yet continued its quiet rhythm. At the bottom of the stairs, the room opened into a hollow chamber, walls lined with smooth stone, shelves holding jars of dried herbs and small, intricate carvings, each one seeming to tell a story of patience and care, and in the center, a soft glow emanated from a crystal set into the floor, pulsing gently, synchronizing with the cabin's subtle heartbeat. Ethan knelt, fingertips hovering over the light, feeling warmth radiate into his palms, and Bolt rested his head lightly against Ethan's leg, a comforting presence, both aware of the miracle surrounding them. The hum intensified, a melody of life and time intertwined, and Ethan whispered softly, almost to himself, "This place has been waiting for someone to understand." Outside, the wind stilled for a moment, snowflakes suspended in the golden light, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Alongside them, as if acknowledging the quiet revelation within the cabin, a secret alive and patient, ready to change the lives of those who had shown kindness, courage, and the quiet perseverance of hearts that never gave up. The gentle hum of the cabin seemed to shift as Ethan explored further, his footsteps light on the smooth stone floor while Bolt moved silently beside him, tail swaying with an alert rhythm. A faint breeze whispered through cracks in the wooden walls, carrying the scent of pine and something deeper, older, as if the forest itself had seeped into the cabin, leaving behind its essence. Ethan's eyes traced the lines of carvings along the beams, noticing how the sunlight, softened by frost and snow, highlighted hidden details. A bird in mid-flight, a swirling pattern that seemed to follow the pulse of the hum beneath the floor. Bolt paused, ears perked, nose twitching at a subtle vibration that Ethan had not yet felt, and together they moved toward the corner where the crystal's light glimmered softly, casting dancing shadows across the chamber. Ethan crouched, letting his hands hover above the glowing surface, sensing warmth and a strange life force that filled the space with a quiet energy, almost as if the cabin had been waiting, patient for decades, for the right presence to awaken it. He breathed slowly, letting the stillness settle in, feeling the harmony of past and present intertwining in the pulse of the cabin. Bolt stepped closer, nuzzling Ethan's knee, amber eyes shining with understanding, as if the dog too recognized the cabin's subtle consciousness. The air seemed to hum with possibility, the faint rustle of the pine needles outside blending with the low melodic vibration beneath their feet, and Ethan felt a sense of calm settle over him, a reassurance that the lives intersecting here, the elder, himself, Bolt, were connected in a way that transcended the cold, snowy world outside. He traced his fingers along the floor's edge, noting the small carvings in the stone, the tiny glyphs that hinted at a history of care and guardianship, and realized that this was more than a cabin. It was a living archive of those who had valued kindness, patience, and courage over decades. As he stood, the sunlight shifted, flickering through the windows and casting patterns that danced across Bolt's fur, silver and cream in the warm glow, and Ethan smiled faintly, feeling a deep sense of belonging he had not known in years. The hum beneath them grew slightly, gentle yet persistent, as if responding to their presence, acknowledging the respect and attention given to the space, and for a moment, the cabin felt like a breathing entity, alive in a quiet, benevolent way. Outside, the wind had softened to a gentle whisper through the trees, snowflakes drifting lazily against the panes, and Ethan felt the extraordinary stillness of the forest surrounding them, a protective shroud over the cabin's hidden wonder. Bolt lay down beside him, resting his head on Ethan's foot, eyes half closed but attentive, ears twitching at every subtle sound, while Ethan traced a careful path through the room, touching shelves, noting the jars of dried herbs, small hand-carved trinkets, and remnants of long-past days, all imbued with a sense of patience and reverence. He breathed deeply, the scent of pine and aged wood filling his lungs, and allowed himself to fully experience the quiet miracle of the moment, a reminder that acts of care and courage often echo in ways unseen, waiting patiently to reward those who listen, observe, and respect the life and history around them. The soft glow from the crystal illuminated the chamber, casting gentle reflections across the walls and floor, and Ethan moved slowly, absorbing every detail, each breath mingling with the faint, clean scent of pine and stone. Bolt shifted slightly, amber eyes scanning the space, ears flicking at every subtle vibration, as if listening to a melody only he could hear, a rhythm that harmonized with the quiet pulse beneath their feet. Ethan noticed that the carvings along the beams now seemed more intricate, as though they had been waiting for his eyes to trace their paths, telling stories of patience, hope, and unseen hands that had shaped the cabin over decades. A faint draft stirred the air, carrying with it the delicate aroma of dried herbs, each inhalation, warming him from the inside out, a subtle reassurance that the cabin was alive in its own serene way. He approached a small alcove where a set of jars rested, their surfaces frosted but clearly containing remnants of care, dried flowers, and roots, evidence of attention and reverence left long ago. Bolt stepped beside him, nose raised, tail moving in careful, deliberate sweeps, sensing the energy that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, a gentle presence that filled the space with quiet guidance. Ethan's fingers brushed against a smooth, curved carving near the floor, the lines seeming to pulse with a gentle light, and he realized the cabin responded to touch and presence, not just sight. Moving further into the room, he discovered a narrow window at the far end, ice crystals catching the sun and refracting the light into patterns that shifted and changed as if breathing with the space. And he could not help but feel the cabin's essence was intertwined with the forest outside, alive with seasons, wind, and unseen life. He stepped to the center of the chamber, placing both hands over the glowing crystal, feeling warmth radiate through his palms and into his chest, a heartbeat in tune with the cabin's subtle rhythm. Bolt rested his head gently against Ethan's leg, a quiet sentinel in the stillness, the dog's eyes reflecting understanding and calm, and Ethan whispered softly, more to himself than anyone else, "It is waiting, patient and kind." The hum beneath them deepened slightly, melodic and soothing, merging with the distant creak of the wooden beams and the muted rustle of wind against the exterior walls, creating a harmony that resonated with patience, care, and the gentle miracle of continuity. Outside, the snow had slowed, drifting lazily against the windows, and the pale sunlight softened to a golden hue that warmed the cabin without heat, highlighting the textures of stone, wood, and frost in delicate detail. Ethan felt a quiet wonder, a sense that the cabin had preserved more than materials. It held intention, history, and the echoes of human care, waiting to reward those who approached with respect, kindness, and attention. He allowed himself to sit on a low wooden bench near the crystal, Bolt curling beside him, and together they listened to the subtle harmony of life, wind, and light that filled the cabin, a private sanctuary where time slowed, and the quiet miracle of connection and discovery unfolded with each breath. The afternoon light softened through the frost-laced windows, painting the cabin interior with a warm, golden glow that danced across the wooden beams and stone floor, and Ethan moved with a quiet reverence, tracing the patterns in the carvings, feeling each groove and curve, imagining the hands that had shaped them decades ago. Bolt padded beside him, nose twitching at the faint scent of pine, resin, and something older, a subtle musk of earth that seemed to connect the cabin to the forest beyond. Ethan approached a small wooden table near the far corner, dust motes drifting lazily in the sunlight, and picked up a thin, aged book resting there, The pages brittle, yet filled with handwritten notes, sketches of herbs, forest paths, and the faintest sketches of constellations overhead. As he turned the pages, the cabin seemed to respond, the hum beneath the floor pulsing gently, synchronizing with his heartbeat, and he felt a profound sense of continuity, as if the wisdom and care of the previous occupants were guiding him. Bolt settled near his feet, head raised occasionally, ears twitching at the soft creak of the floor and the whisper of wind through the cracks, sensing the subtle rhythm of life in the room. Ethan stepped toward a small, arched doorway that led to an adjoining chamber, the glow from the crystal illuminating the way, and noticed faint markings on the floorboards, almost like a map, subtle lines etched into the wood, curving around knots and edges, guiding the eye toward the center of the room. He followed the markings carefully, hands brushing over the polished surface, and found a shallow depression in the floor where the light from the crystal pooled, casting intricate shadows that shifted as he moved, creating patterns that seemed to tell a story without words. Bolt sniffed the air and stepped closer, nose brushing the edge of the depression, as if confirming the presence of something unseen yet tangible, and Ethan felt a thrill of anticipation, a quiet awe at the harmony of craftsmanship, nature, and patience that infused the cabin. He knelt and pressed his hands lightly into the depression, feeling a gentle warmth, a subtle vibration, and a soft resonance that seemed to echo through the room, a reminder that the cabin was alive, not in the way of people or animals, but in the rhythm of care, time, and intention. Ethan exhaled slowly, closing his eyes for a moment to let the sensation settle, and when he opened them, he saw the sunlight shifting across the walls, illuminating tiny carvings he had not noticed before, birds in mid-flight, leaves caught in the wind, stars twinkling faintly, and realized the cabin held secrets meant to be discovered by those patient enough to notice, gentle enough to approach with reverence. Bolt nudged his hand, soft amber eyes reflecting trust and curiosity, and Ethan smiled faintly, feeling the bond between them, a shared understanding that they were now part of the cabin's quiet story, guardians of its subtle magic, witnesses to the slow, patient miracle that unfolded in the warmth of sunlit wood, the hum of stone, and the living heartbeat beneath their feet. The light shifted again, late afternoon sunlight spilling through the frost-covered windows and casting long, soft shadows across the wooden floor, and Ethan felt a quiet calm settle over him as he moved deeper into the cabin, each step deliberate, boots pressing gently against the cool stone and wood. Bolt followed closely, tail low but swaying, nose twitching at every subtle vibration, alert to the faint whispers of the cabin's heartbeat beneath the floorboards. Ethan approached a small corner where the walls curved inward, noticing the interplay of light and shadow, the way it highlighted small carvings he had not seen before, tiny animals frozen in mid-leap, leaves caught in a gentle breeze, and abstract symbols that seemed to pulse faintly in the soft golden light. The hum beneath them grew slightly, rhythmic and comforting, blending with the soft creak of the beams above and the faint whistle of wind slipping through the cracks, creating a melody that resonated with time and patience. Ethan ran his hands along the walls, feeling the subtle undulations, the warmth that radiated from the stone and wood, and he realized the cabin was alive in its own way, responsive to presence and care rather than sound or sight. He knelt near the glowing crystal again, fingertips brushing the smooth surface, sensing the energy flow beneath, a pulse in sync with the cabin itself, and Bolt rested his head against Ethan's leg, eyes half closed but alert, attuned to the vibrations and subtle shifts in air and light. Ethan leaned back slightly, closing his eyes, listening to the harmony of sound, warmth, and light, letting it seep into his bones, feeling a connection not just to the cabin, but to the forest outside, to the snow-covered trees, to the wind and distant creek, to the years of care embedded in every beam and plank. The quiet presence of Mrs. Whitman lingered in his thoughts, her voice warm in memory, guiding him, though she was not here, and he understood the cabin had been prepared for someone with patience, kindness, and a gentle courage, a place where time and care converged to reward those who noticed. A faint crackle of sunlight on frost made him glance toward the window, watching each flake suspended in golden light, dancing in slow arcs, and he felt the cabin breathe around them, alive in subtle ways that promised discovery and quiet miracles for those who approached with respect and presence. Bolt stirred beside him, shifting slightly to press closer, warmth and trust radiating from the dog, and Ethan exhaled slowly, feeling the harmony of companionship, place, and history coalesce into a profound sense of belonging, a calm certainty that kindness and patience were recognized here, that the cabin itself was a living testament to care, attention, and the quiet wonder that patience can reveal. The sun began to dip lower behind the snow-covered pines, casting long, golden shadows across the cabin's interior, and Ethan moved toward the crystal at the center of the room, feeling the gentle warmth radiate through his palms as if it carried a pulse of the forest itself. Bolt shifted to stand beside him, nose lifted, ears alert, amber eyes reflecting the soft light, and the dog's quiet presence grounded Ethan in the moment, a reminder that they were not alone in this subtle wonder. The air carried the scent of pine, smoke from the small hearth that Ethan had kindled earlier, and the faint, earthy aroma of the stone walls, mingling in a way that filled the chamber with a living, breathing sense of history and care. Ethan knelt, tracing the carvings along the floor near the glowing crystal, noticing how the light danced over tiny etchings, each one telling a story of patience, attention, and quiet devotion, a lineage of care preserved in wood and stone. The hum beneath the floor shifted in tone, melodic and steady, harmonizing with the soft creak of the beams and the distant rustle of snow-laden branches outside, and Ethan felt the rhythm, sensing that the cabin responded not just to presence but to intention, rewarding mindfulness and gentle curiosity. He moved to a low shelf along the wall, fingertips brushing over small jars of herbs, hand-carved figurines, and worn tools that spoke of lives devoted to attention, care, and quiet work, each object resonating with the same energy that pulsed through the cabin itself. Bolt's tail swished softly as he inspected the space, occasionally nudging Ethan's leg with his nose, a silent prompt to explore further, and Ethan followed, stepping carefully toward a narrow door at the far end of the chamber. Light from the crystal spilled through the doorway, illuminating a spiral staircase descending into shadow, faint echoes of wind and movement hinting at hidden corners below. Ethan descended slowly, the stone cool beneath his boots, Bolt at his side, ears pricked, amber eyes scanning the dimly lit space for vibrations or subtle shifts in air, attuned to the unseen. At the bottom, the room opened into a larger chamber, walls lined with intricate carvings and small alcoves holding relics of past caretakers, dried herbs, and polished stones that seemed to hum in harmony with the crystal above. Ethan stepped to the center, placing his palms once more above the glowing surface, feeling the warmth spread through him, a gentle reassurance that the space recognized patience, respect, and presence. Bolt lay down nearby, head resting on Ethan's boot, amber eyes flicking between him and the gentle glow, as if understanding that this room, this cabin, had more to offer than what was visible to the eye alone. Sunlight shifted again through the frost-lined windows, patterns moving slowly across the walls, highlighting carvings and textures that had escaped notice, and Ethan inhaled the mingled scents of pine, smoke, and stone, letting the quiet hum, the warmth, and the pulse of life beneath the floor embed themselves into his senses, a silent lesson in care, patience, and the gentle unfolding of discovery that would remain with him long after the snow melted beyond the cabin doors. The fading sunlight filtered through the frost-lined windows, casting elongated patterns of gold and silver across the cabin floor, and Ethan felt a serene stillness settle over the space as he wandered from the central crystal toward the far alcoves, each step careful and deliberate, boots pressing softly against the cool stone and polished wood. Bolt moved alongside him, paws silent, ears high and attentive, amber eyes following every subtle shift in light and shadow, as if he could sense the hidden stories within the cabin walls. Ethan's fingers brushed over carvings along the beams and edges of the floorboards, tracing the delicate lines, the tiny symbols and figures etched long ago, each one holding whispers of care, patience, and time, the echoes of lives devoted to nurturing and protection. The low hum beneath the floor shifted slightly as he moved, a gentle vibration that harmonized with the distant creak of the wooden beams and the soft whistle of wind through the cracks, filling the room with a melody that was both grounding and ethereal. He paused by a narrow window, frost crystals catching the remaining sunlight, scattering it into tiny rainbows that danced across the stone walls and Bolt's silver and cream fur, and Ethan allowed himself a moment to breathe deeply, inhaling the mingled scent of pine, aged wood, and the faint sweetness of the dried herbs lining the shelves. Bolt nudged his hand gently, a reminder that they were not alone in this quiet miracle, and Ethan knelt beside the crystal once more, fingertips brushing its smooth surface, feeling warmth and a subtle pulse of life, as though the cabin itself recognized the patience, care, and gentle courage that had led them here. The soft hum resonated through the chamber, mingling with the sound of the wind and the faint creak of beams, creating a rhythm that invited stillness and reflection, and Ethan realized the cabin held more than objects or history. It held intention, a slow unfolding of knowledge, care, and the quiet reward of attention given over time. Moving carefully, he explored an adjoining chamber, the walls lined with shelves of small trinkets, hand-carved figurines, and jars of preserved herbs, each object arranged with a subtle purpose, reflecting a devotion to quiet work and observation, and he marveled at the patience and intention that had shaped the space. Bolt remained close, nose raised, ears flicking at subtle vibrations, tail sweeping in small, deliberate motions, while Ethan traced his hand along the edges of the carved shelves and stonework, noticing how each detail seemed to guide the eye, to suggest a path, a narrative embedded in the very walls. Sunlight waned further, softening the chamber's glow, and Ethan paused in the center, letting the harmony of warmth, light, vibration, and scent wash over him, a deep, quiet awareness settling into his bones, a recognition that the cabin was alive in its own subtle, patient way. Bolt settled at his side, resting his head against Ethan's boot, amber eyes half closed but attentive, and Ethan smiled faintly, absorbing the gentle hum, the soft dance of light and shadow, and the invisible threads of care, patience, and quiet magic that seemed to radiate from every beam, floorboard, and carved surface, leaving him with a profound sense of belonging, reverence, and anticipation for the secrets yet to reveal themselves as the snow-covered world outside the windows grew dim and hushed. As evening settled over the snow-draped forest, the cabin glowed softly from within, light spilling through the frost-lined windows in a golden haze, and Ethan stood near the central crystal, hands hovering over its warm surface, feeling the subtle pulse that seemed to echo through the entire cabin. Bolt lay close at his side, tail flicking gently, ears high and alert, amber eyes reflecting the shifting light, attentive to every vibration in the room and the faint creak of the wooden beams above. Ethan moved slowly through the chamber, letting his fingers brush over the carvings along the walls, tracing the delicate lines of birds, leaves, and tiny symbols, each one imbued with the care and attention of those who had tended the cabin over decades. The low hum beneath the floorboards grew slightly, rhythmic and steady, intertwining with the distant whisper of the wind through the surrounding pines and the soft scrape of snow against the windows, creating a melody that filled the cabin with a sense of calm awareness and quiet wonder. He approached a small alcove where hand-carved figurines rested alongside jars of dried herbs, the scent of pine and resin mingling with the earthy aroma of stone and wood, and he felt a deep connection to the patient work of generations past, an understanding that the cabin was more than shelter. It was a living memory, attentive and receptive to those who approached with care and respect. Bolt shifted, head raising briefly to sniff the air, tail sweeping slowly, as if sensing a presence beyond the visible, and Ethan followed his gaze to a narrow doorway leading to a side chamber, the crystal's glow spilling faintly through the opening, illuminating patterns on the floor that shifted with the light. Stepping carefully, he descended slightly into the chamber, boots pressing softly against the stone, and found a central alcove where the floor was etched with intricate designs, faintly glowing, the light pulsing in gentle waves that seemed to respond to his movement and breath. Ethan knelt, fingertips tracing the glowing lines, feeling warmth radiate into his palms, a subtle vibration that resonated with the hum beneath the cabin, and he sensed that the space was aware of his presence, acknowledging patience, kindness, and gentle courage. Bolt nudged his legs softly, amber eyes fixed on the glowing patterns, and Ethan smiled faintly, understanding the quiet message embedded in the cabin's design. Care, attention, and presence are recognized and honored here. The wind outside softened, snow drifting in slow arcs against the windows, and sunlight from the waning day refracted through frost, casting delicate rainbows across the walls, floor, and Bolt's fur, highlighting textures and carvings Ethan had not yet noticed. He took a deep breath, feeling the mingling scents of pine, aged wood, and herbs, letting the quiet hum, gentle light, and subtle warmth fill him, a profound awareness of belonging and reverence settling in his chest. Bolt rested his head on his boot, ears flicking occasionally, tail moving slowly, and Ethan realized that this space, alive in rhythm, light, and scent, held lessons in patience, observation, and quiet wonder, a living testament to care and subtle miracles that unfold for those who take the time to notice, listen, and be present in the gentle pulse of life around them. The cabin's warmth embraced Ethan as he moved toward the far wall, where shelves of carefully arranged objects caught the last rays of sunlight, casting gentle reflections across the stone floor and wooden beams. Bolt followed closely, paws soft against the polished surface, tail sweeping in slow, measured arcs, ears high and attentive, alert to every subtle vibration and change in the cabin's ambient energy. Ethan's eyes traced the intricate carvings along the walls, each one alive with detail, telling stories of patience, care, and quiet devotion, the lines and grooves reflecting decades of attention from those who had tended the cabin before him. The low, melodic hum beneath the floorboards resonated softly, harmonizing with the whisper of wind through the frost-laced windows and the faint creak of timber, creating a rhythm that seemed to pulse in sync with Ethan's own heartbeat, filling the space with an almost tangible serenity. He knelt by a small table, brushing his fingers over a series of jars, each containing carefully dried herbs and powders, their scents mingling subtly with the aroma of aged wood and pine from the surrounding forest, evoking a sense of history and continuity that was both grounding and inspiring. Bolt rested his head lightly against Ethan's leg, amber eyes following every motion, tail flicking occasionally as if acknowledging the gentle cadence of the cabin, the subtle energy that filled the room with life beyond the visible. Ethan rose slowly, moving toward a corner where the floorboards appeared slightly raised, revealing a shallow indentation that reflected the light from the central crystal, the glow flickering softly in response to his presence. He pressed his palm lightly against the surface, feeling warmth and a faint, rhythmic vibration that seemed to pulse with the cabin itself, as if the space recognized patience, respect, and the quiet courage that had brought him here. The sunlight shifted, casting delicate patterns across the carved beams and highlighting figures of birds, leaves, and abstract symbols that danced as the light changed, creating an intricate tapestry of shadow and glow that seemed almost alive, whispering stories without words. Bolt lifted his head, sniffing the air, amber eyes alert to something beyond Ethan's perception, and Ethan followed the dog's gaze to the window, where the snow outside fell in soft arcs, the flakes suspended briefly in the golden glow, drifting lazily against the glass as if pausing to witness the quiet miracle within. Ethan exhaled slowly, letting the scents of pine, stone, and dried herbs fill his lungs, and felt a profound sense of belonging, reverence, and harmony, the cabin's energy blending seamlessly with the soft, golden light, the hum beneath the floorboards, and the presence of Bolt at his side. Each breath, each gentle movement, each subtle sound of creaking wood or shifting wind reinforced the cabin's quiet message, that patience, attention, kindness, and courage are recognized and nurtured, that the space itself rewards those who approach with care and presence, and that within the rhythm of the cabin, in the warmth of light and vibration, the quiet miracles of life patiently unfold for those willing to see, listen, and remain fully present. The evening deepened outside, snow drifting silently against the cabin windows, and Ethan felt the space envelop him with a calm intensity, each beam, floorboard, and carved detail glowing softly in the ambient light from the central crystal. Bolt shifted closer, resting his head against Ethan's boot, amber eyes alert yet relaxed, attuned to every subtle pulse of energy and sound in the cabin. Ethan moved toward a small alcove where the crystal's glow reflected across a collection of jars, carvings, and small hand-carved figurines, each object radiating an invisible warmth that resonated with the pulse beneath the floorboards. He knelt to inspect a carved panel, noticing that the lines, previously seeming static, now shimmered slightly, as if the cabin itself responded to his presence and curiosity. The hum beneath them grew gentle and melodic, a rhythm that seemed to merge with the faint creak of the beams and the whisper of wind through the frost-laced windows, creating a layered harmony that filled the room with subtle life. Sunlight, diminished but persistent, filtered through the frosted glass, casting delicate golden highlights across the intricate carvings, revealing patterns and figures that seemed to animate with the light, and Ethan's breath caught in quiet awe at the living quality of the cabin. Bolt lifted his head, ears twitching, and Ethan followed his gaze to a narrow side passage, the light from the crystal spilling in gentle pools along the stone floor, illuminating hidden carvings that traced an intricate path toward the far wall. Step by careful step, Ethan followed the path, fingers grazing the polished wood and stone, sensing the warmth and subtle vibrations, the gentle energy flowing through the cabin like a heartbeat that acknowledged patience, presence, and kindness. The air carried the mingled scents of pine, aged wood, and faint herbs, each inhalation grounding him and heightening his awareness of the cabin as a living space, attentive to those who approached with respect and care. He paused in the center of the chamber, letting his gaze sweep across the carved beams, shelves, and floorboards, noticing how the subtle interplay of shadow and light highlighted centuries of quiet labor, devotion, and mindfulness embedded in every surface. Bolt stood, stretching lightly before settling again at Ethan's side, and together they absorbed the rhythm of the cabin, the gentle hum, the shifting glow of light, and the delicate pulse that seemed to emanate from the very walls and floors, a silent recognition that those who give care, patience, and courage are always met with reward in kind. Ethan exhaled slowly, a deep sense of belonging and reverence settling into his chest, as if the cabin itself was acknowledging his presence and the care he had shown, a subtle miracle unfolding in quiet, patient rhythm that promised discovery, wonder, and the gentle satisfaction of being in harmony with a space alive with history, intention, and the lingering echoes of quiet, unwavering dedication. The cabin seemed to exhale with the evening, a soft, living pulse that resonated through every beam, floorboard, and carving, and Ethan walked slowly through the main chamber, letting the warmth and subtle vibration guide his movements while Bolt padded quietly beside him, tail low and sweeping, amber eyes attentive to every nuance of the space. Sunlight, fading into a gentle twilight, filtered through the frost-lined windows, scattering delicate patterns across the walls and floors, highlighting carvings of birds in mid-flight, leaves caught in wind, and abstract symbols that shimmered faintly in the low light, as if the cabin itself was breathing stories into the room. Ethan's hands brushed along the polished surfaces of the shelves and counters, feeling the subtle warmth and vibration that echoed from the central crystal, a quiet recognition of patience, presence, and gentle courage that had led him here. Bolt nudged his leg gently, prompting Ethan toward a small alcove where the crystal's light pooled, illuminating a series of small, intricately carved figures, each one arranged with care, reflecting the attention and devotion of past inhabitants. Ethan knelt to examine the figures, noticing the tiny, delicate details and the way the soft glow of the crystal brought out hidden patterns in the carvings, patterns that seemed to shift subtly as he moved, inviting observation and reverence. The hum beneath the floorboards deepened slightly, melodic and reassuring, blending with the distant whisper of wine through the pine trees outside and the faint creak of the wooden beams, creating a harmony that filled the cabin with a palpable sense of life and care. Ethan traced his fingers along the edge of a carved floor panel, feeling the subtle rise and fall of the wood beneath his touch, a rhythmic vibration that seemed to respond to his own heartbeat, and he realized that the cabin's pulse was a reflection of the continuity of those who had built, tended, and preserved it through decades of patience. Bolt shifted, resting his head gently on Ethan's boot, eyes half closed but alert, and Ethan felt a quiet joy in the shared awareness between them, the dog attuned to the hidden life of the cabin as much as he was. The faint scent of pine, aged wood, and herbs mingled in the air, grounding Ethan in the present while connecting him to the long lineage of care embedded in every surface. Sunlight dimmed further, leaving the room bathed in a soft, golden glow that highlighted textures and shadows in delicate detail, and Ethan allowed himself a moment to breathe deeply, taking in the hum, warmth, and gentle illumination, feeling an extraordinary sense of belonging, reverence, and anticipation for the quiet secrets and subtle miracles the cabin continued to reveal. Bolt's tail swept slowly across the floor as he shifted slightly, signaling calm and reassurance, and Ethan smiled faintly, knowing that their presence was acknowledged, that patience and care had been rewarded in ways subtle, profound, and enduring, as the cabin continued its quiet, rhythmic life, a living testament to kindness, attention, and the unfolding of miracles for those who approach with respect, awareness, and gentle courage. The final light of day poured through the frost-lined windows, filling the cabin with a soft, golden glow that lingered on every carved beam, polished surface, and stone floor, and Ethan stood quietly in the center, feeling the warmth and subtle vibration of the space as it pulsed in harmony with the quiet rhythm of his own heartbeat. Bolt rested at his side, amber eyes alert yet serene, ears twitching at the faintest sound of the wind outside, the snow falling gently against the windows, each flake catching the light and drifting like tiny fragments of glass across the landscape. Ethan moved slowly from the central crystal to a low bench near the far wall, brushing his fingers over the smooth wooden surface, noticing the small carvings and intricate designs that had revealed themselves only in the shifting light, the way shadows played across the surfaces, creating delicate patterns that seemed almost alive. The hum beneath the floorboards pulsed softly, melodic and steady, harmonizing with the whisper of the wind through the surrounding pines and the faint creak of the wooden beams, creating a symphony of subtle life that filled the cabin with a profound sense of continuity and calm. He knelt beside a small alcove lined with jars of herbs, hand-carved figurines, and worn tools, each one radiating quiet intention and care, and felt a deep connection to the generations of patient attention that had preserved this place, a lineage of thoughtfulness and devotion that spoke to the value of kindness, observation, and gentle courage. Bolt nudged his leg lightly, amber eyes reflecting the gentle glow, and Ethan understood the silent guidance, the shared awareness that the cabin had always responded to those who approached with respect and presence. He rose and walked to the doorway leading to the adjoining chamber, lights spilling from the central crystal pooling across the floor and walls, revealing subtle carvings and textures that had been hidden in shadow, each detail a testament to patient observation and mindful care. Stepping carefully, he followed the glow to a central alcove where the floorboards formed intricate patterns around the crystal, lines and curves pulsing faintly with warmth and light, a living map of patience, kindness, and gentle courage. Ethan placed both hands above the glowing surface, feeling the subtle energy radiate through him, a quiet reassurance that he had been welcomed and recognized by the space, that the cabin itself honored the presence of those who moved with care and attention. Outside, the snow continued its slow, quiet descent, brushing against the windows and muffling the forest, creating a serene silence that deepened the cabin's calm and amplified its gentle pulse. Bolt shifted slightly, pressing his head closer against Ethan's boot, and together they absorbed the subtle symphony of light, warmth, and hum, the quiet miracle that had unfolded for them. A reminder that the most profound rewards come not with haste or demand, but with patience, care, and the willingness to remain present, attentive, and kind in a world that quietly notices and preserves those who do.